Jeff Buckley's somebody who probably most people have barely heard of or never heard of.
Right.
What was your interest and passion in doing a movie about him?
Well, I was a big fan of Jeff Buckley in my 20s, in the 90s, and his death really affected me. It was like one of those really intense celebrity deaths. And so I've always wanted to make a film about him. I've been trying since 2008 or 9 and reaching out to his mom every time I finish a film. And finally in 2019, she said yes. And, it's his legacy is interesting because there's just bumps on. Jeff Buckley kind of spikes every like 10 years or so. And as we were making the film, TikTok went viral on Lover, You Should Have Come Over. Like at some point a couple years ago, he had like 400 million followers or something. So yeah, it's definitely it's a moment for him. And his story resonates with me because he was raised by a single mom. I was a single mom, and unfortunately his father abandoned him while he was still in the womb, and he was always compared to his father. So there was just all of this kind of really important thematic stuff that I wanted to dig into in a documentary, and the archive is incredible. So there are like voice messages to his mother, and so I'm really excited about the final product.
For those who are watching this who aren't familiar, tell us, what is his story? He came to prominence and then he died
Right.
very young. At what age?
Yeah. Okay.
And
So
how?
Jeff's album Grace, which is continuously listed on the greatest albums of all time lists, every year. He released one album, toured for 2 or 3 years, and then died at age 30 while he was in the process of recording his next album. He is one of the most beautiful singers of all time, and his voice is kind of an instrument in itself. And he is constantly considered, he's an artist's artist. You always hear like David Bowie's favorite album was Grace, and Jimmy Page loved him, and Chris Cornell from Soundgarden. That he just has this kind of really exclusive group of fans.
And you.
And me. Yes, and me. Yes, definitely me.
To talk about how you made the film, you needed permission from his family, from his
Yes,
mom.
yes.
What helped you kind of stitch this story together and tell it?
Okay, well, she finally gave me permission in 2019, and the pandemic hit the next year. So I had a certain amount of the archive. Sony was in the middle of transferring things over. And so I went to Topic, actually. I went to Ryan Heller pretty early in the process, and they jumped in right away. And it was an incredible experience because I did not have to rush with this movie. I made it over 5 years. We took breaks. We settled into things. We made a lot of a lot of interesting choices for editing, and I had the time to do it. So so the process was going through everything, trying it a million different ways, and finding that central narrative, which ended up being a love story, and that was the story I wanted to tell.
Talk a little bit about what it is to be a documentary filmmaker today, because we all know how hard it is in the independent film world in general.
Mm-hmm.
And documentaries, I think, have been particularly challenged. You have all of these streamers now that are they're really buying more movies like you're making about musical artists, or, or they like true crime, if you like
Yes,
that.
yeah.
How does that affect you as a filmmaker, as a documentarian, about what you want to do and your concerns about whether your work is going to be able to be seen? Because this is maybe an easier topic in some ways, but you've taken on very difficult,
Right.
controversial topics in your career.
Right. It's a good point. I think I didn't think about this as I was making it, but I think to your point, making this independently was really special, and I didn't have the timeline that we were talking about earlier. But I think if I was making something a little bit more controversial, I'd probably partner up with somebody in the beginning, because you want to make sure it's seen. And I mean, I've had some great partnerships with HBO over the years, and they tend to like to take those kinds of stories on.
But I don't know if we're in that period of time anymore. There was a heyday for that, for sure.
Right. I guess what the answer would be is, can you make a film on your own without a partner? And often you can't. So maybe some of those films won't get made. But I hope that the industry will recover. It feels like there's a real energy here at Sundance this year, and people are talking about buying stuff, and I hope that it recovers. I mean, the streamers, maybe with the latest Oscar nominations, might have different agendas. I don't know. I saw that it was
Like, what do you mean?
Well, there were no streamer films on the final 5 for documentary. I mean, Netflix had 3 pretty strong films this year, so I don't know what that will do to the overall agenda, but I feel like getting your film seen by more people is, that's the goal. So
definitely. But it's do you know what you're going to do next? Do you have
I do. I have a few projects. I'm working on a Chris Cornell documentary, actually, and we do have part of the financing already. And I'm working on a film about Suzanne Summers that we're going to be taking to the marketplace soon. Yeah, and I have one other project that's kind of in development right now.
Oh, wow. So you're going to stay on this track of like interesting personalities and exploring that.
To be honest, yeah, I kind of want to make films that are a little bit lighter right now. I definitely, like, I've done my time in the darkness, and I feel like this is where I'm at right now. So I'm going to keep going with this. I enjoy making films that are archive based.
Yeah, that's interesting. It's a little bit the sign of the times. People want someplace where their work puts them in a happier environment, maybe.
Totally. And I think that's what audiences want as well. So
you think that audiences want what exactly?
Things that are a little bit lighter. I think it's hard to digest. I mean, yeah, it's hard to digest.
What's hard to digest?
I was just thinking about I met Dave Franco at the last suite we were at, and he was telling me about his film and asked me if I liked horror films, and I was like, okay, so I couldn't watch the last 10 minutes of The Substance, and I loved that movie so much. And so, like, I don't know. I guess I don't know. It's doing really well, but there's a point where it just keeps going, and I just couldn't watch it. But I loved that film, and I loved everything about it. So I don't know. I guess just for me, I'm going to be spending years in a subject, as I always do when I make a film. So I want to, like, be in something that I really feel safe in exploring, for my state of mind, my mental health.
I so fully understand that, and I think that I think you are not alone. I think a lot of people are sort of feeling the desire to pull back a bit.
Right. Yeah, I'm really excited to see Folk Tales, which is here at the festival.
I'm going now
today.
Yeah.
And I was just talking to Heidi about this too, and it's just like joy. How can we, like, enjoy movies that we make? So I'm really excited to see that film.
Well, thank you for coming. Thanks for Jeff Buckley. I'm excited for you to share it with the world. I'm excited to see it.
Thanks,
and keep on making joy, Amy.
Thank you. Thanks, Sharon. Thanks, guys.